Hi, David Toulis. Our show covers local economy and the free market. We are exploring a very touchy subject, and that is the connection between capital and marriage. Capital and marriage, meaning money and marriage, wealth and marriage. The idea that with marriage you have the means of bringing the future about in a way which you direct, as opposed to a way in which other people direct. And capital is a family-oriented thing. It is a substance. Capital represents labor. You can store up capital in gold, in silver, in liquid commodities such as corn, wheat, acreage. And capital it's a vast thing. Of course, capital is also ideas, and that, of course, is why you listen to our show, Nuganomics.com, with me, your host, David Toulis. Capital is ideas, and capital is a way of looking at the world, and it's my hope to impart to you a kind of intellectual value, a kind of substance that shines like gold, but which is in the context of propositions and ideas, which I hope I make valuable to you by reading and thinking and just living the life of the ordinary man, because that's what I am, after all, a very ordinary man, a commoner. I'm the slow man of Chattanooga. David Toulis is my name again. My fingers are or were once stained with printer's ink, as I have a background in the newspaper business earlier in my career as a writer and reporter, and then for almost 25 years as an editor at the local newspaper. And my hope is that by our getting together here for a few minutes every day at Nuganomics.com, we can prosper each other, because thinking about you, my listener, helps me to steward my ideas, to steward what I know, and to direct my reading, to direct my analytical powers, which are just ordinary. They're just ordinary analytical powers, I would like to suggest. And our getting together, you and me, is profitable to me. So I want to thank you for making yourself available to be my listener here at the Copperhead station. Just a quick word about who we are. Copperhead 1240 Radio is a little AM station, the one that could. And it is a capital. It is a for-profit enterprise. It's capital-oriented in its desire to serve. It has an audience, of course, and it has clients or customers. And I try to prosper them. Folks such as, for example, Capital Toyota. These are folks who run a dealership on Lee Highway. The McCamey family owns this dealership, and I'm trying to prosper the McCamey family. So you see, there's a mutual relationship between our station and local economy actors and players such as that. That's maybe one of the bigger ones, but there are certainly many smaller ones, such as Jet's Pizza. It would be another one. And what we want to do is to prosper Chattanooga and Hamilton County with dialogue and maybe a little monologue as circumstances dictate or allow. And the marriage question is extremely important, because there is an assault on marriage, and Stuart James is going to be filing a lawsuit today, not sure in which jurisdiction, maybe Chancery, to block the people, the common folks in a district in Chattanooga, from having a recall election. The lawsuit wants there to be no Democratic movement among the souls in that district, which covers Alton Park, and I understand it covers part of St. Elmo as well. That's the district whose people are represented by their choice by Chris Anderson. Chris Anderson is a noted homosexual and is becoming famous around the country for being a stalwart homosexual politician and elected figure, public servant, if you will. And there's a national fundraising effort on the homosexual lobby websites that are seeking to drive cash to him. Of course, homosexuals not having children are often very rich people. They are temporarily liquid, you might say, and are generous with him, and they will be very generous with him as the effort to unseat him progresses in the courts, in the courts and in the front porches of houses, dwellings, apartment buildings in District 7 of Chattanooga. And this vote to unseat him and the vote to overturn his seductive moves toward the city council, which passed an ordinance, as you know, passed an ordinance favoring gay partner benefits. These two efforts are about capital. They are, but the narrative, if you read David Cook, the columnist in the Chattanooga Times Free Press today, if you read his narrative and others and hear their gloss, it really is about something quite different. And these other opinions are the kind of masking language. And the thing that's being masked is what our show is about. It is capital, and it is the family. The family is at the issue of this whole question. What is a family, and can we redefine a human relationship and a public recognition of a human relationship, namely marriage? Can we redefine that can we define it? Because that's what happens if homosexuals are given the privileges and protections and immunities and rights in marriage. What you've done is de-define marriage. You have made it utter nonsense, and it is an injection of chaos into the legal system that will bring terrible and bizarre problems in the future, bizarre myriad problems that will be baffling. And the reason they'll be baffling is because there is no out, there is no solution to these problems. They cannot be answered except by going back. And of course, no one will want to go back, even people who oppose gay marriage, as it's called. They will be somehow convinced that one can't go back. One cannot rescind, one cannot overturn something that from the first moment that it passes, if it passes in a national sense, will be thought, even by good people like you and even like me, to be irreversible, that it will be a step down a path which is irretrievably opened frontwards, and behind, though, the door is locked. And that sense of this historic sea change, as it could be called, will take effect at the very first moment that people hear about the High Court decision. Now, my perspective is that the High Court, though tempted to violate the constitutional structure of the 50 states and its union, because of their ideology, most of them, there's a majority Catholic opinion, there's a majority sort of socialist-oriented justices, despite their desire to give the blessings of gay marriage, of marriage equality, as it's called, to all the people in all the states, they are going to be drawn up short by the somewhat strict constructionist perspective of several important judges, the more conservative ones, and they will say, well, look, we can't take from the states more than what the Civil War already took from them, and what the 14th Amendment already took from the states. The states have there are 50 nations effectively, and we're not taking from them police power. In fact, for a decade now, police powers have been shifted back toward the states, some measure of them anyway. And that is because the court recognizes the structure. We live in a political republic that has a federated or covenantal structure of government, and the states each is allowed by vote, by representation in its legislatures or in their legislatures. Each state is allowed and given total liberty to define its own future, whether it's an anti-capital high tax future, such as Michigan with Detroit and New York and California, or a low tax pro-free market perspective, and also in marriage. And how marriage is to be understood as in recognition of the people's right to marry. Right? People have a right to marry, and I would say, in fact, marriage regimes and statutes around the 50 states are just a recognition of the enactment of a common law right. And though these are called licensure regimes, they envision that the would-be marrieds apply for permission through the licensing process. These are, in fact, just they're not compulsory. They are procedural, you might say. And every man has a right to marry. Though I say that advisedly, because if you want to marry at common law, which I advocate your son perhaps consider doing, he needs to go to a common law marriage state that recognizes common law marriage. The nearest one to Tennessee or the nearest one to Chattanooga is Alabama. So the nuptials have to be contracted there. The marriage has to be contracted in Alabama. Now, I've written about this at Nuganomics.com. The Nuganomics.com, which is hosted here at Copperhead 1240 AM, is a website for the thinking man. The thinking man goes to Nuganomics.com to find out what things really mean. And these are my analyses of deep questions sometimes, usually taking a contrarian and minority report perspective, because that's how we can be used. We don't want to just repeat what people are saying, even if these people elsewhere are saying the right thing. We don't want to just repeat it. We want to say something different and say something that's either ahead of where they are or just behind where they are, so that you can think more accurately about what you're hearing in the buzz, right, in the news feeds on your homepage, in your email. Well, my name is David Toulis. Our show is Nuganomics.com. And like I said, we have a lot to get to today. William James, but what's the name of the lawyer for Chris Anderson will be filing his suit today to prevent the voters of that district hearing a peep more about the dissent against their those residents elected city council member. There was a meeting last night and a story about it by Holly Webb at Chattanoogan.com. Holly Webb attended a gathering of ministers, meaning Christian ministers who believe in the goodness and have a care about the law of God. And it was I think it probably was partly a strategy meeting, but also it was partly a show of solidarity by Christian men, by Christ's mouthpieces, if you will, in that district. It's Chattanoogan.com, and the headline is "Several Church Leaders Give Views on Anderson Recall." One of them is Jonathan Johnson of Church of the Firstborn in St. Elmo. He apparently addresses the media. He says, "We are here to show our moral stance against Councilman Chris Anderson." Notice moral stance. Okay, is that a green opinion or a red one? He spoke for his father, Pastor Alfred Johnson, in a news conference of several District 7 church leaders discussing their support of the recall of Mr. Anderson. George Clay, also quoted, a pastor at New Beginnings Church in East Brainerd, says, "I don't know him personally, and I'm not here to criticize him personally. It doesn't only affect people in the 7th District. It affects all of us as Christians and as children of God. It seems like Mr. Anderson is more concerned about chickens in the backyard than he is about our children being shot in our backyards." You see, that reason right there would be a green reason, a good one, allowable by Mr. Anderson and his lawyer, Stuart James. Pastor Clay went on to say he openly admitted that he's a homosexual, and that's fine with me. Well, I'm not sure about that, but okay. He goes on to say, "I'm not here to choose his lifestyle. However," he said, "it's a bad example for children, not only in the 7th District, but all over the city of Chattanooga." And that, of course, is to cohabit and have a sexual union with an anal sex and all the other things that pertain to illicit sexual relations with another man. That would be the objection that Christianity makes. There is such a thing as lawful lovemaking. There is such a thing as lovemaking by right. Right? If you're married, my listener, you have a right to make love to your wife. You could even say you have a property right in her, and you do, because we know that that's true because sometimes you see in the newspaper stories about loss of consort, when a woman is denied, a man is denied, or a woman is denied sexual relations with a partner, and that's called loss of consort, and that could be a tort. So if you do something against me to hurt me, and I'm unable to make love to my wife Jeanette, well then I can sue you for a tort, and that tort is loss of consort. And why is that? Because I have a property right. I have a right to make love to my wife, and so do you, of course, my listener. So Christianity is interested in these rights. It's very interested in a right and lawful use of sex, and you have to understand why that is for just a second. I mean, sex is such an amazing thing. Sex is so powerful. It is a unique experience, and of course it's widely abused. It's widely abused. In the news cycle today, there's a story about sex trafficking, and I'm not remember what the source is, or what the source is today, but it's about sex trafficking, and we understand that sex is something people pay for. In Havana, Cuba, according to Graham Greene in his novel Our Man in Havana, sex is always what Havana is about. It's never given away. It's always bought or sold, he says, in his narrative telling about life there in Havana. Well, that may be true there, and it's true here in a lot of ways. So sex is a powerful thing, and what Christianity teaches is that sex unites two souls together in one flesh. It is a miraculous thing. We can't fully account for it, and I don't think we can fully explain it, but even a man with a prostitute, according to the scripture, becomes one flesh with her, even though on her face have been the passions and expressions of passion of hundreds of other men. And so on her expression and in her eyes are a chaos of creeds, of screeds, of comments that are finally, they're all just a babble of claims and voices and sensations in her life and on her person, and of course on her soul. Sex is a powerful thing, and we have to understand that these Christian ministers are, and of course sex is the foundation of local economy. You might say, well, here comes David again talking about local economy in a new and wonderful way. Well, other people may think it's not wonderful, but I'm glad you think there's something potential here. Because if sex is the foundation of local economy, because think of, in sex is the drive to serve people, right? That's what local economy is all about, serving people personally and caring about them. And your whole life as a man, my listener, has in the background the power of sex. Sex is the power that you have. And when you make love to your wife, are you not a bolder and braver man? Well, of course you are. And when she makes love to you, you are a man who can conquer the world, even if all you're doing is running a little farm with vegetables, or even if all you're doing is manning the store, hired by somebody else. Even you can be a go-getter, and that's because your wife made love to you. And so we have to understand that these ministers are concerned about sex in general because God regulates it. God regulates sex. There's lawful sex, just as there's lawful killing. Then, on the other side, there's unlawful sex, and just as there is unlawful killing. You can have lawful taking, and you can have unlawful taking. Just think for a second. At Chattanooga.com, there's a headline about Chattanooga police work. 8 robberies, 39 burglaries, 75 thefts, 44 shoplifting cases, February 3 to 12. Well, why is there a report about this? Well, that's because there are various kinds of unlawful taking going on, and so violating the 8th commandment against theft, if there's a robbery, there are these robberies. For example, the first one on 2038 South Willow Street. Robbery is more than just a theft. It's a threat against a person's life and well-being. So that violates the 6th commandment against murder, the commandment against unlawful killing. So, of course, the police are going to investigate these violations of God's law. That's why they're hired. They're hired to protect those 2 commandments and of course, others. So this is the analysis you get from me, your host, David Toulis. My name is David Toulis. Our show is Nuganomics.com. And we are sponsored by several very fine local businesses. And I want you to just think about loving your neighbor and shopping locally. If you have a death coming up in your family, do think about engaging Hamilton Funeral Home, run by local owners and local operators and managers. Josh Jennings would love to hear from you. If you have something coming up in your life and you want to plan ahead, call Josh Jennings at 531-3975. That's 531-3975. So our argument here at Nugonomics.com is for local capital. And here we have ministers who are concerned about the abuse of sex, because Chris Anderson is abusing sex. Okay, that's all there is to it. What he wants, of course, is he wants it to be legal. He doesn't care about what God says, of course, but what he does want is that it be legal in the sight of men, and that it be called a marriage, so that you're making love to your wife is, in his theory, equal to two men having anal sex. And of course, Jerry Mitchell, the city councilman, agrees with that. Jerry Mitchell says two men having anal sex and doing other things that are connected with that, they are equal, and that act is equal to you having sex with your wife, making sweet love to your wife. They're in the morning, the children are still asleep, the doors are locked, and the sun is just peeking over the horizon. And she's thinking something, and you're thinking something too. And and you have a liberty. You see, you have a liberty to make love to your wife. And Chris Anderson doesn't have that liberty. He thinks he does. He has what he calls, or what we would call, license. He has total sexual license. And he wants marriage to be redefined to account for that, to absorb this license, which is, of course, violative of another of God's commands. And those commands were in view as these ministers met. I think they're all black. They're black ministers. They're African Americans. Pastor Clay continued. He says it's a bad example. Whatever is an abomination to God is an abomination to me, he told the press. We're going to have to take a stand. Our children are being shot down. They don't have a chance. He's talking in that case about crime and what is perceived to be an indifference to the crime problem by the councilman. Again, that's a green reason, though the red reason, meaning the reason that's illicit, right, is whatever is an abomination to God is an abomination to me. And of course, homosexual sex is an abomination to God. That is a basic Christian teaching. Christianity does not flinch from that point, except perhaps the forms of Christianity so watered down that they are really not Christianity at all anymore. And there are some churches that hold to a kind of Unitarian perspective. Pastor Clay, George Clay of New Beginnings Church in East Brainerd, said, the reason why we want to recall Mr. Chris Anderson is we're trying to do preventative maintenance. We're trying to stop something before it gets started. If you stop a leak, it will never start to run. If we stop Mr. Anderson, it won't be widespread. If we stop it right here and nip it in the bud, we won't have to worry about it later. And another person at this conference press conference said, as a church, we want to stand in unison to protect the ordinance of marriage, to preserve our society. They want to preserve capital. They want to preserve what you have. And we have to understand that if, on the national scale or on the local scale, if capital is not preserved, we have debt and collapse. This is David Toulis. Hang on. Why is it shutting down?
Just call me, 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975. Hamilton Funeral Home. Oh, one more thing. Love your neighbor. Buy local. Do you feel better outside your home or business than in?
Why is it shutting down?
Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and road damage are prime causes for indoor air quality. Ducts, indoor air professionals that are known as duct busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable duct busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business and help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Jake and Joan Thompson, have been building a local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems. 16 years. Ducts, indoor or professional. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
Hi, my name is Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. I help people who want to be self-employed. I help my clients through a very fact-based and analytical process to understand all the criteria that's important to them. I then help them look at franchises or businesses that fit their criteria. Once my clients find the right opportunity, I help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying themselves at the startup phase. If you're just curious to understand the types of businesses that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My phone number is 423-875-5621.
All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. This is unheard of. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. You have to get the Capital Toyota on Lee Highway. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota is home of the world's classiest mid-priced car, the Camry. Capital is your Lexus and Scion deal. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota on Lee Highway with a savings of
Okay, you get your taxes done by a franchise, but you're just a number. Your preparer might have had a 9-week course, but he's a number 2. Are you creating prosperity for your customers and yourself? E.J. Pelton clears the thick underbrush of taxes, helps make your way straight. Don't let uncertainty dampen your local economy spirit. Look, come on, let E.J. Pelton Tax Service handle your taxes. Eric Pelton is the Chattanooga and Saudi Daisy tax specialist with 37 years under his belt. Eric Pelton also does bookkeeping and accounting to help you reach your entrepreneurial and financial goals. Confidential advice, consulting, and other services. Yours for the asking. EJPelton.com. That's EJPelton.com. Call 332-3339. That's 332-3339. Think again.
the American Outdoorsman. America's premier hunting and fishing radio show. Explore the finest fishing and hunting adventures with the industry's leading outdoorsmen. Great tips and techniques that will enhance your experience in the great outdoors.
So part 1 was days.
The Man Radio Station. Hunting, fishing, NASCAR, Tennessee talk, Southern rock, kickin' country. 1240 The Copperhead. Get the latest news and information now. On your Twitter account, search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's twitter.com. Then search Hot News Radio. Hot News Radio is a service of Copperhead 1240. Live.
Yes, my name is David Toulis. Thank you for joining me. Our station is the little station that could, AM radio. We are right next to Rush Limbaugh. I hope you may be a fugitive from Rush Limbaugh, coming to better things. And we are here opposite the great host every day for a couple hours. And I'm glad you're willing to give me a couple of minutes of your time. You can watch our show at online live. If you can put me in the background on your screen, maybe up in a corner, put me behind the work windows that are really much more important than anything we have to say. And you can find us at ustream.tv/channels/Copperhead1240. And we stream live there. Again, that's ustream.tv/channels, that's a /channels/Copperhead1240. And that is the fact that we can do that is a picture of disintegration. It is a picture of decentralization. If you go to our website today, or my website, Nuganomics.com, you'll have a chance to look at a very interesting discussion, an interview with one of the finest writers I know, and whom I'm often quoting, Charles Hugh Smith, who is talking about the benefits of education once prices drop 95%. Prices will drop 95%, and a so-called education that you think you're going to have to pay for your children, that's $120,000, $200,000. Well, just lay that whole worry, that whole plan aside. Okay, that plan is not relevant anymore. Why? Because you can get a bachelor's degree for about $5,000 or $6,000. I heard a speech in a biblical worldview student conference last year, I think it was, or a couple years ago, of an Atlanta student, a very well-spoken 18-year-old homeschooled boy who got a business administration degree, did not step a foot in a single class. He did it by testing and by online courses. And his cost was, I'm not remembering now, maybe $11,000 or so, maybe it was $9,000. I'm not recalling, but a very small amount. And we have to understand why this is happening. It's happening because the marketplace, thanks to the internet, thanks to the fact that our show can stream live online in television, that we have the power of the digit is breaking up old monopolies, old cartels that, such as the newspaper business, held sway for decades and decades because no one could compete. And now the competition is tremendous at every point, and there's an opposite problem, that a good man, a common man, a slow man like me, David Toulis, is actually really hard to find. It's hard to find people who have something that's just slightly better than what everybody else has to say. And I hope that what I offer you as my listener today here at nukenomics.com is slightly better than what you hear elsewhere. Partly because it's local and it is Nuga-centric, and partly because what I offer is a perspective. It is not just arguments and news, but a perspective on what you need to be doing and what I think needs to happen in Chattanooga, and not imposed from above, right? Not imposed by good people, by important people, not commanded by a court, but rather things that happen individually and by people who discover with the use of their rational minds, who discover the marketplace and discover what all is available there, especially, well, just YouTube. Okay, YouTube is an educational service that most people don't even think of as an educational service. I want to just mention a couple of local economy players. Since I'm urging you to have your own little business, let me recommend a couple of very valuable resources. One is Bruce Krebs. He runs Entrepreneur Source. His name is Bruce Krebs, and a very wise man, very knowledgeable, knows everybody in Chattanooga, and will get you into a franchise. Now, you think I can't do something like that. Well, stimulate your old bean, as Bertie Wooster calls the cranial gray matter, and do something different. You got your job, you got your routine. Do a franchise on the side. Get some new ideas. Learn something different. The more you have of diverse nature in your mind, the more useful I think you'll be on your job, and you'll be creating a new income stream on the side. So think about doing that. Do as I did. I quit a job. I quit a newspaper job that paid me, I don't know, $29,000 a year, something like that. And I'm now working as an entrepreneur. I'm risking capital. I've got family capital. I've got my children's inheritance on the line here as a host of our show, because I'm an investor and I believe in serving God with the gifts He gave me, gifts that weren't being used in my servitude as an employee. So Bruce Krebs can help you through this whole complex area, but you have to want to have something that you're starting on your own, generating a new revenue stream. A new revenue stream, that is what you need to have, and you need to have a little bit more confidence in yourself. You, my listener, you know things that other people don't know. You are a smart man. You know things in your area, even though you're just an employee of an organization, maybe a government, maybe a trucking company, maybe an enterprise of some kind, and you have something that you can generate value for other people. If you have such an insight, then that is valuable. The question is how to capitalize on that. So Bruce can help you perhaps in that area. And his number is 875-5621. That's 875-5621. The other source is a very fine man, Eric Pelton. He is a CPA. He's a businessman. He does tax returns for people in his business. That's ejpelton.com. ejpelton.com is his website. And he does the books for all kinds of businesses. And he's got a great office here in Saudi Daisy, where our tower is. And that's it's just north of the Balo Shopping Center on Dayton Pike. The number in the main office down on Brainerd Road is 622-3156. That's 622-3156. And I mentioned Jet's Pizza again. Have Paul Niemeyer make you the deep dish square. Okay, deep dish square pizza. And that little shop is deserving of your support as a local economy lover. That's what you are. And tell them you're my listener. Come to the cook or the clerk there behind the register and say, I'm a Nuganomics.com listener and I want to buy pizza from you. What do you got? And I will be grateful to be in his good graces. And that's what I think. That's how we can help each other here in the local economy. Our slogan, we do have one, is one that Josh Jennings at Hamilton Funeral Home likes to say, and that is, love your neighbor, buy local. Love your neighbor, buy local. That's not anything either of us devised, but it's a great idea. If you go to Nuganomics.com, my very humble and plain website, which has very few moving parts and it's very simple. Its plainness, I hope, attracts you. I hope that you will not be put off by its plainness, but that you will see that my interest is in the ideas that underlie our theory. You'll see a great little video on YouTube. It's a 26-minute interview between Charles Hugh Smith and Gordon Long, who runs a investment program, and the discussion is about the educational disaster that we face. We have an educational disaster because we have a schooling success. Educationally, we are at bottom, but in terms of institutions, i.e. schools, we are at the pinnacle. We are as great as we can be. Schools are creeping downwards to get the youngest children just off the breast. We have to get them into a class too. And the interview touches on several important points, and I just want to tell you what they are. Media and knowledge are not scarce anymore. They're almost free, which means you don't have to have school. And students no longer need to be congregated in classrooms to hear oral lectures. Lectures can be distributed at no cost via the internet. The factory model of schooling, which a local economy finds distasteful and unproductive, well, that can go. That can go. Textbooks that only written by committees, consumed by the student who's not supposed to think, right? Textbooks make it impossible to know anything. They can go. They no longer make every sense. Every digital device is a library. Your phone is a library, and where you can have lectures, right? You can play a lecture on your phone as you drive to your job. And we have, thanks to homeschooling and thanks to the internet, we have ways of tailoring educational concepts and materials to individual students via interactive software. Oral lectures, they were needful for Socrates, but we don't need them now thanks to the PDF, thanks to the online reel, you might say. And so what we have the power of decentralization coming, and yet because we are loath to remove things that, despite their fault, despite their ridiculous costs, we're loath to remove them because we are familiar with them. In fact, that concept is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, where as Thomas Jefferson drafted some of these comments, people are unwilling to remove themselves from tyranny because its forms are so familiar and they're comfortable with them, even though pained by them, they would rather solace themselves with familiar tyrannies than the breathtaking and daring prospect that comes to the eye of any man who insists on being a free man, insists on having his liberty and his own assets. Well, higher education is a grave problem, according to this piece and this interview by Charles Hugh Smith on Nuganomics.com. It's 26 minutes long. I encourage you just to give it a little time. It will revolutionize your thinking. What we need to have is we need to find a way of cutting costs in Chattanooga. Half of the county expense is in the public cartel for education. If we could somehow all agree that this can be dispensed with, we will reduce our tax burdens by half and make Hamilton County a much more attractive place to win businesses from high-tax states such as California, where the rate of taxation from the state itself is about 11%. We can draw people here. We can win them to a low-tax climate if we understand the power of the PDF to overturn the public school classroom. Higher education is characterized by limited to no learning for a large percentage of students. There's a graphic that you'll see on the video that shows comparison in inflation. College tuition and fees are up 1,140%. Medical inflation, as it's called, is up 613%. The price of a car has gone up about 95% since 1977 or so, according to a graphic that you'll see at Nuganomics.com on the video. Again, that's Nuganomics.com. He talks about, in his essay that brings out some of this material, the status quo having substituted false solutions that completely ignore the real problems of soaring costs and diminishing returns, increasing, here are the false solutions, increasing student loans and hiring hundreds of thousands of non-teaching administrators. He says, citing an analysis, the number of employees in central systems offices has increased sixfold since 1987, and the number of administrators in them by a factor of more than 34. Smith is the author of The Nearly Free University and the Emerging Economy, the Revolution in Higher Education, one of 7 books he has written, and a bachelor's degree should cost about $5,000, not $100,000 or $200,000. As I'm suggesting to you, the technology exists to allow this to happen. Only inertia is preventing the idea from reaching the common man. Of course, now you, my listener, you're not the common man, right? You listen to the suggestions of David Tulis. That is my name. I am the host here at Copperhead 1240 of Nuganomics.com. I'm a former newspaper man. Now I'm a radio man. I believe in the intimate interactions we can have. You, the listener, me, the man who comes to the microphone, having thought all day, and really thought much of my life about the things that we talk about here on my show. What I'm saying to you is not something recently arrived at for me. I have been thinking in terms of liberty since at least for 30 years, and I've written a lot about it, and I've published newsletters. One of my first newsletters in Chattanooga was a hard money rag called SECLA Report, and SECLA is an acronym for Service for Information on Church, Law, and Education Reform, because I was going to cover all the bases, and I did. And of course that was printed in the days when printed things were very influential. And there was another newsletter that I published for the CAPA, the Chattanooga Area Parents Association, after that. So I've always been thinking about these questions, and the things I offer here as your host and your friend at Nuganomics.com are long in the stewing process, and I hope they taste better. I hope that they taste as if they've really had a right mix of spice and other worthy ingredients. The goal should be in the economy. Well, the economy is driving the the accreditation process to shift. Nowadays we have schools that are accredited, and technology is allowing for the accreditation interest to shift to the student, not accrediting the institution, the corporation, but the student. To provide, he says, the technology and tools already exist to accredit the student, not the institution, and provide distributed courses, adaptive learning, and real-world workplace-based workshops for a tiny fraction of the ineffective, unaffordable system of higher education we are currently burdened with. And he says, once costs decline 95%, there is no need for student loans or the bloated bureaucracies currently overseeing the parasitic student loan system. Once we accredit the student and not the institution, universities will have to compete. Guess what will happen to UTC? Guess what will happen to Lee University, to Bryan College, to Covenant College, where the Christians go? Well, they will be decapitated. They will be thrown out of business. They will not be able to serve anymore. And all of these schools are making efforts to account for the internet, but I think structurally they can't. They can't structurally, just as the Times Free Press was or is not structurally able to account for the internet, even though I proposed in 2012 a scheme to bring into the newsroom the free market, the internet-driven economy, a scheme which met with silence and curious looks among the managers. He says, once we accredit the student and not the institution, existing universities will compete directly with nearly free universities, not in issuing diplomas, but in how much students actually learn and master. If students can learn as much or more for $5,000, including workshops in real life workplaces, than they do for $160,000 in conventional universities, then the sectors of higher education that charge $160,000 for a 4-year degree will vanish. They will simply disappear. Technology, you could say, has leapfrogged higher schooling, higher education, just as it has leapfrogged the banking sector with Bitcoin and other and cryptocurrencies, which are the direction of the economy. The economy is shifting away from these old systems, and will, I think, destroy the pyramids that are littering the American economic landscape. You know, local economy is not really a pyramid, and that's because while there's a lot of credit absorbed in local economy, where many false signals are visible, the false signals are visible in empty shopping centers, for example, and in credit card statements and debt statements and mortgage statements that come to people monthly demanding $480 checks be drawn against their accounts. These kind of scenes are a picture of pyramids in a lot of ways. And I was suggesting earlier how the idea of the pyramid is visible in the national economy because a pyramid, and I think it comes from Garrett in his great little volume that I'm reading parts of by PDF called "The Bubble That Broke the World," and he is very poetically and beautifully describes the nature of the pyramid. The pyramid is remember, capital is labor, right? Capital is labor gathered into another form than actual sweat and toughened fingertips and brains churning in front of a computer screen. That's all labor. Capital is labor that is wrung into another form, wrung into the form of money, perhaps. Or yeah, it's credit. That's what credit is. It's future labor amassed for present consumption. And the national economy is like the pyramids of Cheops, the Egyptian pharaohs. They are places where labor is destroyed because what happened. Remember, there were 100,000 men, some of them perhaps Israelite slaves, worked on treasure cities for the Egyptian pharaohs, and 100,000 people of various tribes and slaves. They worked 100 years to build the pyramids. There were 3 of them in that one great site. But they are dead. Pyramids produce nothing. They are simply a drain. That's where a capital goes to die. And the death is of all the labor of the people who wasted their lives doing fine measurements and hauling 80-ton blocks of rock on logs from the delivery port. And we have similar things in Chattanooga, all around Chattanooga. It's not as bad as the national economy, but they're still there, of course, because we reflect national economy. National economy has many, many pyramids that are mostly, they're often government programs where money is just consumed, capital is consumed, credit is stealing from the future of people's labor. That's what credit is. And you ask, well, how is it stolen? Well, it's stolen because the means of exchange in which those debts are contracted is flexible. Okay, it's not fixed. It's like having a ruler one day that's 13 inches and the next day it's 9. We have a medium of exchange which is not fixed by law anymore. Something we highly deserve, by the way, since we Americans have rejected God, and so we've rejected His standards, and so we deserve to be victimized by others in the same way that we have victimized God Himself. But if you have a medium of exchange that's constantly fluctuating, what happens is generally there's an expansion of the units of that medium of exchange. In other words, there's more debt, so there are more dollars. And as dollars are ballooning into the economy, borrowed from nothing and injected by checkbooks, right, by expenditures in the economy, you have a destruction of that unit. And that, of course, steals from everyone, past and present, who has been dealing with local economy and national economy in terms of that dollar. So the destruction is against the dollar. And it wipes away all the labor that's represented by people who are holding that diminishing and scurrilous asset. This is David Toulis, Nukenomics.com.
Take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a new Camry. This is unheard of. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. You have to get the Capital Toyota off Lee Highway. This month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota is one of the world's classiest mid-priced car. The Camry. Capital is your Lexus and Scion bid. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota on Lee Highway with a savings that much better.
When your loved one dies, we in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She left us here. Death is so much more than a trying time, but we have to deal with it. You want a funeral home that helps you get through your ordeal. You want a professional, but not one who lacks warmth or sincerity. I'm Josh Jennings. That's what I offer. Hamilton Funeral Home and Cremation Services in Dixon. Care for you. A local owner and operator who keeps your funeral costs down. A great place in which to remember, even celebrate the life who is gone. Just call me. 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975. Oh, one more thing. Not your name.
Flash, it'll take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out of Jet's at Dixon, or take home your steaming deep dish square pizza, you'll love Jet's. They use only the best ingredients in a family recipe. Also try their cheesy bread, wings, chicken, or bread with bacon, antipasta or Greek salad. Jet's Pizza and buy low nearly S curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. You can order online or have it delivered. JetsPizza.com. That's JetsPizza.com. Or call them now. They'll have it ready when you get there. 757-1616. That's 757-1616. Hot and delightful above the clouds. Chet's Pizza. Now that's Italian.
You're a hard worker. Your little business is your future.
How is it a pyramid economy? Because
that works to help you keep what you have earned. EJ Pelton keeps current on tax laws and has been helping people like you for 37 years. EJ Pelton has an office on Dayton Pike in South Daisy, open all year to serve you. Think ahead, ejpelton.com. Call 332-3339. That's 332-3339. That's ejpelton.com. Think ahead.
consumptive capital consumed.
Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. Your advantage is in our name. Customer service. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. Family owned and operated. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services features the highest quality in all your printing and graphic needs, including engineering drawings, offset printing and mailing services. Advantage Printing and Mailing Services, your one-stop shop for color graphics and much, much more. Call 629-1800, 423-629-1800 for Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. 4031 Brainerd Road in Chattanooga. That's 4031 Brainerd Road in Chattanooga. Call 629-1800, 423-629-1800 for Advantage Printing and Mailing Services. Your advantage is in our name. Customer service. All systems go.
People that are outside your home or business than in, indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and road damage are prime causes for indoor air quality. Ducts, indoor air professionals that are known as duct busters, cleans HVAC systems using 147 definable duct busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Jake and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, indoor air professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
Get the latest news and information now. On your Twitter account, search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's twitter.com. Then search Hot News Radio. Hot News Radio is a service of Copperhead 12.
Hi, my name is David Toulis. Our station is the little one that could, the little station that tried and got over the hill, Copperhead 1240. Copperhead 1240. We have a planned lineup of great shows coming up. We're the station where NASCAR is heard on the radio. Nowhere else but here at Copperhead 1240, NASCAR. And we have a variety of hunting and fishing programs. And as we beef up our offerings and get a little bit better organized, being as tiny as we are, individual players in our station have a lot of sway, and there's no committee, there's no board of directors. We have the idea of Laura Ingram coming, and Coast to Coast is coming on our station very, very soon. Just tune in. Of course, that's the show that runs from midnight to 6 a.m. I think Dan Norrie is the host, a very intelligent man, and we have there's another national host we hope to have here at Copperhead 1240, and a local talk show from a couple of notable free market, civic-minded, libertarian-oriented men, businessmen, no-nonsense men who will talk about local news and give a good perspective for you, my listener. And I do appreciate your giving me a couple of minutes of your time on my show, Nuganomics.com. I'm a writer and a journalist. I make arguments. You might say I editorialize, and I do a little bit of reporting. And Nuganomics.com is the only place in Chattanooga where you can find the net worth statements of local governments. The first one I've written about is Chattanooga, worth $3 billion, a hair above. according to its latest comprehensive annual financial report. And county government, I keep getting blockaded in my efforts to work through that one. The county's about a third as rich as the city, according to its comprehensive annual financial report. And I've got some questions. But you know how it is. If you're a small entrepreneur as I am, everything falls to you, and sometimes important things don't get done. The Times Free Press today has a brief story by Dave Flessner, the business editor, from quoting Bob King, the United Auto Workers president, and he is accusing Bob Corker, who made public statements, right? He's making statements, and he called them 100% wrong in trying to sway Volkswagen workers to favor the free market as opposed to the cartel, the labor cartel. And he said, Senator Corker entered the fray just to intimidate voters. And it's interesting how giving his opinion, the federal senator giving his opinion, is viewed as intimidation. It seems like the union people are, they must not like intimidation. Is that one of their hallmarks, to avoid intimidation, to refrain from threats? Is that part of the union idea? Well, I've got to figure that one out. I'm impressed here because Bob King does not like that anything touching on intimidation is involved in that vote that went in favor of the right to work and in favor of the marketplace. Well, I wanted to mention a couple of local people for you. Capital Toyota. If you're buying a car, there's a special on right now on the Camry. If you buy the car with a loan through the dealership, you will get a 0% APR, 0% interest rate, and you get a $1,000 rebate. So that's something to think about. Toyota is the best line, I think. I've got 3 going in my house. A son off at college has one of them, a Camry, that I bought used. I bought it at 100,000 miles. So you say, oh, hey, that's not smart, David. Buying a car, I paid $6,000 for a Camry, owned by one of the Williams Webb people and one of the staffers there. And it's been a great car. It's passed 200,000 miles now. And you can buy a Toyota at 100,000 miles and think, wow, it's a new car. And it was like a new car for me. And the owner had maintained it well, and I'm glad that I have that for use in my family. And I want to mention Dick and Joan Thompson, who run Ducts, the indoor air professionals, also known as Duct Busters. The couple has handed the reins of the business to Mark, their son, and this outfit in Middle Valley will clean the ductwork and in your business or home and reduce the air pollution that may be causing asthmatic type reactions and other problems. So if there's a mold problem in your building or in your ductwork, Ducts is the group to engage for that. And also, every Friday at 6:45 a.m. is Panera Posse. Panera Posse, which rounds up the bad guys and puts the money back in the bank. I'm invited, your host David Toulis, here at the Copperhead 1240, and I usually go. I didn't go this last Friday for I had to do something. I'm not remembering now, but it just wasn't possible for me to attend. But I would love to meet you, my listener. You are invited to go. And I tell you what, if you're my Nuganomics.com listener, I will buy you the coffee, okay? Just join us at Panera Bread Store in Hickson at 6:45 a.m. My name is David Toulis. Just look for me. And we have a bagel and enjoy ourselves in conversation. These are libertarian, Ron Paulian type homeschool dads, okay? So they're free market interested. They are largely Christians. And I know you're not a Christian, but maybe it's good to meet some Christians who think through the issues. And I think Panera Posse is a place where some of that thinking is done. Well, I want to get back to talking about Chris Anderson and the whole idea of capital that is espoused by the gay theory. But before I do, I wanted to just touch base on another matter that is very important. And I think it's a defense of local economy vis-a-vis the police. And when Mr. Tsarnaev, the alleged bomber of the marathon event in Boston, when he was being sought, it occurred to me that the ouster of hundreds and hundreds of people from their homes by the police was a very serious blow to local economy. And it showed that the people who run the police state in that part of the world don't understand the benefit that local economy can give to finding a criminal. Now you say, well, David, you're stretching the local economy so far. Now you're suggesting that it can help apprehend criminals. Well, exactly right. Think for a second in this way. When everyone was ordered into his house, no one was allowed to leave his office. It was shelter in place. What a euphemism that is. What happened is that the fugitive was not likely to make a move. Remember, he was captured in a boat that was on a trailer in a man's backyard with a tarp over the top. He was finally found there. But if it occurred to me as that was being, since I have an aunt in a hospital in that very town, in Watertown, I talked with a cousin about her situation, and she was not reachable. But it occurred to me that having a living economy where a suspect is tempted to make a move to maybe blend in with the crowd to get away, that is a perfect way to catch a man rather than have everyone in his house, and to have every homeowner ousted, thrown onto the sidewalk by command at the muzzle of a 30-round clipped carbine, a .22-23 caliber carbine, by a man with no warrant, wearing a helmet and body armor, with a gang of 20 fellow officers behind him, intending to go through your house because you may be hiding a terrorist suspect. The whole idea, that whole event just struck me as the most bizarre. And then Reason magazine, a few days later, reported that most of the people interviewed were thankful. They were grateful to be searched without a warrant. And so there are blows against local economy from inside by the actors of Watertown, Massachusetts economy, and from the outside. But if we care about Chattanooga local economy and care about self-determination, the whole idea that in the digital age, with 3D printing, eventually being able to make every homeowner a manufacturer, why do we not want to have the police state? Is the police state good for local economy, or is the police state bad for local economy? My thinking is that it's bad, because what it does, it makes people apprehensive, and the free market really requires people like you to have confidence. You need to have the sense of security in your property, in your effects, in your drive. Your flash drive needs to be yours. You need to be free to not have to go around armed, to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, free from stops on the highway, to have your left cheek swabbed out by a National Transportation and Safety Administration contractor under threat that somehow if you don't yield to this survey, you're going to be put into the clink until you post a $500 bond. Well, these sorts of things are there's a pandemic of them. There are videos online that are just ghastly of women being kicked, women bound with at their wrists, arms behind them, kicked in the face by a bulky police officer. Why are they always bulky, I wonder? And there are many other videos that I see. If you go to, for example, the Tea Party Facebook page here in Chattanooga, you'll see many of those links. That's a useful place to go if you're consigning yourself to the Facebook world and have not rejected it. Then go to the Tea Party Facebook page, and you can see outbound links to stories and videos of some of these egregious things. Well, local economy requires confidence for it to expand, and part of the main confidence I would think is that you, my listener, need to love your wife, and you need to love your children and give them time so that they can become productive bearers of your name, because they are bearing your name generations into the future, and you're going to give them your heirs 5 generations away. A great disadvantage if you don't do very important spiritual and moral work on them now. Giving them your time, for example, that's probably the main thing. Giving them your time without interruption. It's not quality time that matters, it's quantity. Now that's one thing. And then maybe having another child. That would be very good for Chattanooga because we have only 150,000 people here. We are very underpopulated. We need to have at least 300,000. That is the population of the county, I think. And the county is also very sparsely populated. We need to have maybe another 500,000 people come. But we can create them by making love to our wives, or we can win them over by cutting taxes and making the county, maybe the city, a free trade zone. You're not the only person who's thought about that, right? There's at least one person in government, in local government, who is thinking in this direction. At least one, and we need to encourage that kind of thought. John Whitehead is a lawyer who runs the Rutherford Institute, named after Samuel Rutherford, whose book was the ownership of which was a capital offense to have at the time of its writing back in the 1600s. It was Lex Rex, the law is king, was the title in Latin. And he has a piece that's appeared at a couple of websites that I think you should consider, LouRockwell.com being one of them. And he's pointing out how centralized systems, especially as they gather a police state mentality, don't have sufficient feedback. There's no feedback loop for them to correct mistakes. Yes, they have police departments and paramilitary organizations that have at least a publicly stated policing purpose, have feedback from the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center in, I think is it Alabama, which is a kind of a hate group that lists people such as James Dobson, the minister, as overseeing a hateful organization. But they don't have, that's not feedback, okay? That's just driving, that's an intellectual argument driving them towards a greater aggressive stance against the good people of our city, of our county. And his headline is Paranoia, Surveillance, and Military Tactics. Have we become enemies of the government? He says, pay particular attention to the heavily armed officers in tactical gear. The surveillance cameras, the drones, the roving Viper squads, which are on the loose in Tennessee, the cops who shoot first and ask questions later, the military drills in small towns, the military equipment being funneled to small town police departments, and the massive ammunition purchases by domestic agencies such as the Postal Service, the Department of Education, the IRS, and the Social Security Administration. While this hyper-militarization of the government is being sold to the public as a means of preventing terrorism and maintaining national security, it is little more than a wolf in sheep's clothing. He has just recently published a book, A Government of Wolves, the Emerging American Police State. He says, what we are dealing with is a police state disguised as a benevolent democracy, a runaway government hyped up on its own power and afraid of its citizenry, whose policies are dictated more by paranoia than need. Unfortunately, we the people have become so trusting, so gullible, so easily distracted, so out of touch, and so sure that our government will always do the right thing by us, that we are ignoring the warning signs all around us, or at least failing to recognize them as potential red flags and opportunities to ask questions, demand answers, and hold government accountable. He's the one who revealed the DHS plan on purchasing 75.1 million rounds of ammunition in 2014. And in the past 2 years, that corporation, the Department of Homeland Security, has purchased 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition, along with 7,000 fully automatic 5.65 x 45 millimeter NATO personnel defense weapons, plus a huge stash of 30-round high-capacity magazines. And DHS has also received 2,500 mine-resistant armored protection vehicles, MRAPs, which they have begun passing around to local law enforcement departments across the country. He cites a story I've seen from other sources. Richland, South Carolina, for example. U.S. Army Special Forces participated in joint and secretive exercises and training with local deputies. This is John Whitehead. The public was blocked from obtaining any information about the drills, other than that they might be loud and should not cause alarm. Documents obtained recently by the website Media Trackers indicate that the Ohio National Guard conducted a training drill last year, which involved responding to an imaginary terrorist threat in which school officials plotted to use chemical, biological, and radiological agents against members of the community. The alleged terrorists were also portrayed as gun rights activists. The Ohio National Guard has also conducted a training exercise involving a fictional left-wing environmentalist terrorist group. And John Whitehead goes on to say, when one considers the growing list of opinions and activities which may make a federal agent or government official think you're a terrorist or sympathetic to terrorist activities, advocating states' rights, believing the state to be unnecessary or undesirable, conspiracy theorizing, concern about alleged FEMA camps, opposition to war, organizing for economic justice, that's of course Chris Brooks, frustration with mainstream ideologies, opposition to abortion, opposition to globalization, and ironically, ammunition stockpiling. It becomes that much harder to answer no when asked, have we become the enemies of our own government? Well, the fact that the people have always been enemies of the state is not new. And from the beginning of the nation state as a concept in let's say the mid 1700s, that idea has become more and more prevalent. And what I appreciate about these writers is that they present it as something fresh and new, right? And they do that to make it interesting. But it's an old phenomenon. It's a very old one. Think of Abraham Lincoln in his great war to prevent Southern independence. He jailed people like me, editors. Newspaper editors were thrown into the brig in military jurisdiction without charge, and some were held for 4 or 5 years. Their presses smashed, their investments confiscated, their wives given little or no access to their persons, the writ of habeas corpus suspended by that fine man with the stovepipe hat. I think we need to understand that the system is centralizing because of its nature, and it will continue to centralize up until the very end, until the very peak of its power, when suddenly there will be, you could call it a divine interruption, and very, very possibly it'll be a marketplace disruption. It'll be triggered by something irrelevant to the results. Okay, you have to understand that society is so complicated, no one can accurately predict when the giant collapse will happen, but it will happen in a rush to the exits. And of course, that's not to mean that you won't be getting groceries that day, right? The week when it happens, you won't have to fill up your car with gas, okay? It doesn't mean that you won't have to fill out those employee performance reports. You'll still have to do that. You'll still have to talk with the accounting department about getting the quarterly ledger together. All those things will still happen. You'll still go to church. Well, your neighbor in your office will. You won't, but he will, to worship God. All these things will happen as they do now, but there'll be a great cataclysm, and it'll be ignited by something irrelevant to it. If you look at the narratives of the event, of course, the press will immediately have explanations as to why it's happening, but there'll be a rush to cash. Okay, a rush to cash is when people agree suddenly. They see things as they really are, and they will liquidate. They will sell, but of course they'll be stymied by their broker. I'm sorry, you can only sell $25,000 worth of shares a day, and that's what you'll get. You won't be able to sell in a rush. Okay, you won't be able to liquidate immediately. You'll have to take your losses as the thing collapses. And I talked about that a little bit yesterday, but the reason we have this problem is number one, there's no feedback loop in centralized systems. And the feedback loop is you. You are the feedback. Your grumblings and complainings are not going to be listened to. And that's why you might as well not bother, your constant posting of articles from American Thinker, right, or gunrights.org or what have you. That's not going to. No one's going to hear that. It doesn't really matter to them because they don't care. And what they're not seeing is that there's a rising sense in the public, and you. Let's just pretend for a minute that you are a member of the public, right? The member of the public man. You are a public person. We all are, of course. We're all public people in our current tax system where we cannot be private people. It is forbidden to be a private person anymore, just about. And so there's no feedback system in the central system. And number two, there has been a confusion in it, in a legal distinction that's pretty important. In business, it's called the agent principal distinction. The principal is the man who's in charge. He engages an agent who has signing authority for contracts, who has negotiating authority, who can bind the principal by his signature, right, after a negotiation. He can bind the company to an agreement. Well, what we've lost is that distinction as between the national power and us. We thought we were the principals, and that the national government in Washington, the federal power, representing the union so-called, that it is the agent. Well, no, that distinction is been made meaningless, and they are, in fact, they've always been, from the time of Alexander Hamilton, the principal. And we are not the agents, okay? We're not the agents, and they're not the agents. They're the principal, and we just have to develop local economy.
It's an over $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. This is unheard of. All this money take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. You have to get the Capital Toyota on Lee Highway. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota is one of the world's classiest mid-price car. The Camry. Capital is your Lexus Scion deal. All this month, take advantage of 0% financing or a $1,500 rebate on your new Camry. That's right, $1,500 cash back or 0% financing on a brand new Camry. Capital Toyota on Lee Highway with a savings that much better.
Are you tired of working in corporate America or have recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
When your loved one dies, we in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She left us here. Death is so much more than a trying time, but we have to deal with it. You want a funeral home that helps you get through your ordeal. You want a professional, but not one who lacks warmth or sincerity. I'm Josh Jenkins. That's what I offer at Hamilton Funeral Home and Cremation Services in Dixon. Care for you. A local owner and operator who keeps your funeral costs down. A great place at which to remember, even celebrate the life of one who's gone. Just call me, 531-3975. This is Josh. Again, the number is 531-3975. Hamilton Funeral Home. Oh, one more thing. Love your neighbor. Buy local.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. The voice of NASCAR. Copperhead 1240 AM. Southern Rock, Kenyan Country, and Tennessee Talk. Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh baked pizza. And in a flash, it'll take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza. If you eat out of Jet's Pizza, or take home your steaming, deep dish square pizza, you'll love Jet's. They use only the best ingredients in a family recipe. Also try the cheesy bread, wings, chicken, or bread with bacon, antipasto or Greek salad. Jets Pizza and Buy Low near the S curves. Open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. You can order online or have it delivered. JetsPizza.com. That's JetsPizza.com. Or call them now. They'll have it ready when you get there. 757-1660. That's 757-1616. Hot and delightful above the clouds. Jets Pizza. Now that's Italian.
Hello, guess what? Haven't you heard about the new Flight Museum in Hickson? The Hickson Flight Museum is one of the most unique places you'll ever visit. We believe in not only preserving history, but giving it life. Our exhibits are living, breathing historical artifacts that are regularly maintained and operated. Hickson Flight Museum, offering guided tours, birthday parties, field trips, plane rides, event rentals, and air shows. Located near the Dallas-based Sky Park, 1824 East Crabtree Road in Hickson. 423-228-2359. The Hickson Flight Museum. Its curators encourage visitors to climb into the pilot seat of the North American T-28 Trojan, peer into the cockpit of a 1946 Taylorcraft, and enjoy a scenic trip over Chattanooga in a 1958 Piper Apache. We're open for individual tours, and we welcome school groups, Boys and Girl Scout groups, or any group interested in learning about aviation history. And what we do, please visit our website at hicksonflightmuseum.org. 423-228-2359. Check us out on Facebook. Copperhead 1240, Southern Rock, Talking Country, Tennessee Talk. Copperhead 1240.
Get the latest news and information now on your Twitter account. Search Hot News Radio. That's Hot News Radio. For the latest news and information, go to Hot News Radio. That's Twitter.com. Then search Hot News Radio. Hot News Radio is a service of Copperhead 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Hi, David Toulis. Our show is brought to you by Capital Toyota. Capital Toyota, the dealership on Lee Highway, whose name signifies our main focus here at Nuganomics.com. My name is David Toulis. I'm the host. I am the editor of the great little website here in Chattanooga that has a few people who read it. And I don't say that with any pride. I just say that admitting that the arguments that I make here and there are not suited for the mass, okay? They're not suited for the mass person because the mass person really doesn't know how to think. He doesn't have the wherewithal to put things together as I do. And I admit I put things together in a way different from many, though I'm just an Orthodox Christian. I'm not saying I'm have any kind of inside Gnostic knowledge or anything, but I'm a common, ordinary man. And the slow man of Chattanooga, no less, David Toulis, the slow man. And at Nuganomics.com we explore the relationship of local economy to prosperity. And the theory is we need to have a free market in local economy to prosper and survive the meltdown. The meltdown is coming, and we need to understand why it has to come. It has to be there, and we should not dread it, though we will lose half of our value amid the thing. We should welcome it because it will be a catharsis. It will be a cleansing. The dead wood of economy, the dead wood of ideas, will be ripped away by the velocity of events, by the sheer terror of it. It will be a terrible event. It will last for, it could last for 2 or 3 years, but as we look at it from a distance here now, looking into the future, we can describe it that way because its effect will devastate all those connected with the old economy, with the old order. And you're connected with things by your ideas. And that my goal here at Nuganomics.com is to offer common man suggestions about prosperity. And we only have 2 hours a day, and I do thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, though I'm always constrained by the fact that I don't want 3 hours. I could have them, I suppose, but being a slight owner of our station. But on the other hand, I figure it's important editorially to compress things, because in compression there is greater value, and it uses your time better. In the event you have more than a few minutes to give me, then I need to get off the stage quickly and not take up your valuable time. Well, I wanted to get to a bunch of things, and I just wanted to throw out at you the idea of how the current system of legacy cartels fading, how that shows up in the world of capital. I have a friend who's a programmer trying to raise money by crowdfunding, and there's a story. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about a scientist named Ethan Perlstein. This moved on Thursday, the 6th of April. I'm sorry, the 6th of February. And he's written some papers on pharmacology. He did postdoctoral research at Princeton. And he is trying to raise $1.5 million for a lab. He's a young fella, very nice-looking man. And he's wanting to study a rare set of diseases. He's got a spot in San Francisco in a biotech, quote, incubator. And he's going to be raising money. He started 10 days ago or so on a site, something like Indiegogo.com. It's Angel List. And the story mentions others who have done well in crowdfunding. One outfit raised $350,000 on Indiegogo, and that man was an independent scientist selling, who's doing research and wants funding for it. And so by crowdfunding, you decentralize the capitalization process, and you avoid banks, all of which, of course, take their very large fees from any securities work. And what's happening is the whole Security and Exchange Commission body of law that cartelizes capitalism, and it freezes out the small investor like you and like me. It allows only people called qualified investors to participate, and those are people who have net worth, or I don't know, net worth of $1 million and income of $300,000 or more per year, something like that. Very high, high flyers. Ordinary people are shunned because they don't know how to measure the risks. They can't possibly know how to deal with capital and invest. And we want to save them from losing their shirts, and so we're going to just prohibit them from being investors where the high flyers go, and those are called authenticated or qualified investors. And so the internet is bringing to the common man the prospect of raising his own money for, say, a bike shop. What if you want to start a bike shop but you need $200,000? Well, go to Indiegogo and crowdfund it, and I'll help you. That's what I do here at Nuganomics.com. We are always looking for people like that. If you have a story to tell, contact me through Nuganomics.com. If you want to talk about this sometime, let me know. I'll be having my routine of guests again soon, in God's providence, and we'll have people like that to talk with other people. You're my listener. You know things too, and you're valuable, and you may have some experience in this. And we want to further the ideas of local economy and decentralization. Local economy is premised on decentralization. And the main ideas of local economy, as I like to write about them at Nuganomics.com, are small is better than big, personal is better than corporate, and near is better than far. Yeah, near is better than far. And simple is better than complex. I think that's the other one. Simple is better than complex. And of course that's not always true, but because for the national government to work, it has to be complex, right? It has to be Byzantine in its complexity. It has to be impenetrable and unreachable, and it can't be anything but that, because it's so large. Of course, it doesn't function anymore, but then we knew that would happen. And as the federal empire grew, and the Union added more states, people lost the sense of being distinct. They wanted to be apart, right? They wanted to join. And so eventually 50 states gathered together with their agent, the federal power. But of course, as I was saying, the national government is no longer the agent, and the states are the principals. In fact, the principal and the agent is the good people and their myriad agencies and services. Before my time gets away from me, I wanted to mention a couple of things more about local economy and the lawsuit Chris Anderson that will be filing today in circuit court. I had thought it might be in Chancery, but I think it's nougat.com. David Morton has an update on his story, and he got an advance copy of the suit from Stuart James, the attorney. Now, he did not send me a copy, so I'll just have to wait to get it later. And so that's coming today, and it's important to understand that people who we're trying to look at the homosexual theory from an economic perspective, okay? Not just, I'm a Christian, so I have, of course, God's perspective, the standard biblical perspective, which is that sex is regulated by the 7th commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. That commandment, which is God's will for man, for God's glory and for your benefit, that command regulates and controls the use of sex. Okay, that's the main thing in view in that. And so there's lawful sex in marriage, the liberty of marriage, as the writers like to say, and then there's unlawful sex. That would include rape, that would include fornication, that would include bestiality, homosexuality. These are unlawful, right? They're unlawful, and in some countries in Africa, which is far more enlightened in Christianity than America is, that homosexuality is prohibited by law as a crime in about 30 of 50 governments. David Cook is a columnist at the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and he has a column today defending the gay life and the gay way, and he's complaining about a bill by Senator Mike Bell, which anticipates the overturning of marriage by Washington, by the black-robed jurists in Washington, and this legislation would prohibit the oppressive use of the marketplace upon people who provide services to married couples or a couple planning to marry. And here are a couple of paragraphs from David Cook, and I want you just to listen to this because it sounds as if I could have written it. My name, by the way, is David Toulis, and you're listening to our little station, the NASCAR station, Copperhead 1240. Copperhead 1240. I do appreciate your listening in. Again, the name is David Toulis, and our show is Nuganomics.com. He says, remember, he's arguing for the gay position, and he's arguing that he's arguing for what the establishment press refers to as he is against laws that, quote, limit marriage equality. That's the way that those three words describe from the objective media perspective what these acts are intending they are lawsuits attacking laws limiting marriage equality. They have to be overturned, you see. David Cook says, humanity is not monochromatic. Our struggle is not against a paint-by-numbers creator who only makes plain Jane stuff, nor with a natural world that only operates with some single vision. Just brown butterflies, only flat deserts, nothing but white people. Life is, notice what he's doing here. He's saying that there is diversity in creation. He's making a great point. Life is magnificently different, and our struggle is to realize those who may not seem like us, the disabled or dyslexic, the dwarfs and giants, the transgendered and gay, belong just as fully at the American table as anyone else. So he's making an emotional appeal again. That's how the gay lobby always appeals to emotion. It's always that the Tennessee law bans gay marriage, which it doesn't do at all. It just doesn't recognize. You can have a gay marriage if you want. Anybody can do that. In fact, there's a video through one of Sean Phipps's recent columns of two lesbians who got married on a Market Street Bridge. They got married. They weren't banned from doing that. There's no law against that. They did that. And so in their own eyes, they're married. So there's no ban of gay marriage in Tennessee. The constitutional amendment didn't ban it. It just recognizes only in law, only the marriage, as marriage, only the union, perpetual union, the sexual union, the cohabiting union, the objective union of a man and a woman. But notice where David Cook is going in his column. He's pointing out that there's diversity, and of course that's what I'm for as well. If you're for local economy, you have to be for diversity. Local economy is about diversity. Everybody with multitudinous opinions about all kinds of things, whether politics or morals, living in the same town. They identify with each other by virtue of geography. and a shared destiny, being in that part of the world, in that geography, drinking from the same river, and enjoying the same views when the sun sets. There is a diversity. So that is creation, of course. That is, and David Cook is pointing that out. But notice where he starts getting into this sort of queer area, where the transgendered and the gay are likened to the disabled, to the dyslexic, to very tall people, to dwarfs, giants, and dwarves. He says, we don't want to have just brown butterflies. We want to have the monarch butterfly and many others that are decorating with their flitting wings the edge of our garden as we sit there with an iced tea and enjoy a summer evening after dinner. We can watch them. Well, sure, there has to be diversity, but what David Cook is really getting at is that by redefining marriage, we are being just. He is appealing to emotion. You are a greedy man. You, my listener. Why? Because you have something that the homosexual, Chris Anderson, the city council member, and his he can't have that, right? Chris Anderson and his husband or wife, whatever it is, his male partner, they can't have what you have. You are being given a great privilege to be married, and that is true because it comes from God. And now, would you be so greedy, so selfish, so self-centered as to deny his appeal against the law, to make the law wider, to allow him to be married too? He wants to be married as well. But what this perspective doesn't take into account is that you can't have you can't make a private passion, a private sexual license. You can't have that and want to have it publicly approved and change what all law is based on. Law in Tennessee is based on the common law. The common law comes from Anglo-Saxon law, and much of it is influenced by Scripture, by the Ten Commandments. As I was pointing out, when the Chattanooga Police Department hounds people who perpetuated the robbery at 800 Pine Street in the latest roundup, or the other one at South Willow Street, or another robbery at 2104 Macaulay Avenue, they're enforcing biblical law, the law against the loss of your property by force, and the law against the threat of your personal safety by the assailant, right? By the thief. A thief becomes a robber when he threatens your life. That violates together two commandments that God gives to man, and by which he enforces the right to live and the right to capital, the right to your own property. So the police department is already enforcing God's laws in many, many ways. We need to be glad that they're doing that. They're providing a noble and great service to apprehend violators of basic rights and basic liberties like that. But as the ministers who gathered last night, the black ministers in District 7, are pointing out that God has certain standards. And we need to understand that these standards are not just being quietly disobeyed by homosexuals. They're being openly and brazenly presented as virtues. And there's something Jacobin about this from the French Revolution, Robespierre and Saint-Just and all these people who were bloodthirsty revolutionaries. There's something very virtuous about their carnal bloodletting, which was what their revolution took place in the streets, right? They bribed, and the Duke of Orleans bribed tens of thousands of people from his great war chest of gold to riot and to slaughter and to commit mayhem, often highly drunk. And there were three waves of the revolution, and so but what I'm getting at is this kind of sense of virtue that they had, the revolutionaries has, the Jacobins as they're called. We have the same virtue that motivates and impresses and is mimicked by the homosexual lobby. And it touches on local economy because what they want is not local economy. They want their view of the world is of a top-down economy. They want a top-down economy. Notice this top-down aspect in the Chris Anderson lawsuit. He wants that there be a surveillance of the voters who are petitioning to have the verdict, to have the recall vote. That's the green reason and the red ones. The red reasons that are illicit, illegitimate, confounded, evil, wicked, and to be suppressed are anything touching on Christianity. And of course, these are ministers in that district. There's one from another district, I think, quoted in the Chattanoogan. They are Christian men, and so they're going to have to say things about God and God's ways and how God hates abominations, and what's an abomination to God is an abomination to me. That's what one godly man said. Who could expect any different? Well, you see these in the Chris Anderson top-down centralized government perspective, in his formula of reality. Reality is established from the top down, not from the bottom up. It's not democratic, it's autocratic. And that's why his lawsuit will seek to overturn the will of this sampling of the district who want a recall. They are going to be barred. Notice what happens, though. If they can't have their reasons, then people who have legitimate reasons, so-called, right, green reasons, ones that meet with his approval, ones that can be allowed, such as, he didn't answer his phone, he ignored the crime problem, he didn't care about the potholes, he neglected the housing issues that we presented him. These are the green reasons, right? Those people who have those reasons are now denied a recall because at least one person was a Christian and held to a moral perspective that God prohibits and bans and loathes and hates homosexuality and calls it a judgment. He calls it a judgment. Just read St. Paul in Romans chapter 2. If one person has that view, according to the Stuart James lawsuit that Chris Anderson will be probably getting pro bono from that lawyer, those are reasons are illegitimate. And so what again, top down. But notice in other areas as well, the gay theory is a statist, let's call it progressive theory, in the sense that it envisions a top-down supervisory state. And this is so obvious to me, and I want to say just something about it again, because it's a point I've made before. And if you want to read more about this, please go to Nuganomics.com, the site that has explored this issue in detail from a very lively and compassionate man, which is what I am. I'm very compassionate, and I don't hate anybody. They might accuse me if they heard me, then I'm a person who's hateful, but far from it. I'm very sympathetic. But what we're against is not the individual homosexual. We're not complaining about them, but their political agenda, their legal agenda, because they don't believe in capital. They don't believe in family. Because think about homosexuality. Homosexuality is a perversion. It's a perversion. It is a type of warfare against God. In fact, it's the highest form of warfare against God, where these men burn themselves out in their bodies, and they're sinning against their own bodies, and that's something they have to ask God to forgive if at some point He gives them grace to repent. He may give it to them, but He may not. It's up to Him. But there's no continuity of capital. In other words, homosexuals don't envision the family. That's why their ordinance, that's why Chris Anderson, are rightly to be understood as an attack on the family. Well, this is David Toulis, and our show is Nuganomics.com, and I'm just getting started. And I do hope you'll join me tomorrow. We're the NASCAR station, Copperhead 1240 AM. We've got great talk shows coming up. Coast to Coast is going to be on our station very, very soon. Laura Ingram, we're going to have a local talk show host. Of course, there's Russell, Generation Z, the tech show that's just before mine. I do hope you will join us and join me. Again, the name is David Toulis. But there's no continuity of capital in the gay idea. Why is that? There are no children. You want to give an estate to your children. They will increase that estate and pass it to their children, right, downstream. But in the gay theory, there is no continuity of capital. Capital is understood to come from the state. Notice how state-heavy the whole theory of the gay life is. You can't have children, so you have to go to the state to get a child. You have to go to the foster care or adoption process, a very burdensome, governmentally intense procedure. You can't naturally have your own children. Of course, you can hire some woman to rent her womb to you if you're a homosexual lover, a man-man situation. You can hire a woman to inseminate her, and she carries your baby for you. But again, that's very complicated, very tricky, and it's not part of the way God made man. He didn't make man and women for that purpose. Where your future, your continuity into the future, is by adoption and artificial insemination. It's called artificial insemination because it's artificial, right? You, my listener, you don't have to work. You don't have to go that route. You have an intimate relationship with your wife. Your marriage is based on a distinction between sex. You're a man and she's a woman, and that is diversity. Diversity is what marriage is all about. The homosexual theory is not diverse. It's a homogeneous, monochromatic scheme of things. It's top-down, requires a lot of state intervention, and it lacks diversity. It lacks what David Cook says we need. Well, this is David Toulis, and thank you for joining me here at Nuganomics.com, Nuganomics.com.
We in the South say he's passed, gone to another place. She left us here. Death is so much more than a trying time, but we have to deal with it. You want a funeral home that helps you get through your ordeal. You want a professional, not one who lacks warmth or sincerity.